In Olympus, where marble holds up the sky and gods dine on eternity, a scandal took root. Not of kingdoms or crowns, but of hearts. The goddess of love was bound in a marriage without fire, until the god of war met her gaze. Desire turned to danger, and their secret would shake heaven itself. Aphrodite stood upon the marble steps of Olympus, and the world paused to admire. Her skin carried the glow of dawn. Her golden hair seemed spun from sunlight itself. A sheer veil clung to her form, as though even fabric longed to worship her. Around her, doves wheeled in patient circles, and the columns rose like supplicants, catching the reflection of her beauty. Her beauty was not an ornament, it was an atmosphere. Mortals who caught her gaze forgot their griefs. Flowers bent toward her shadow. Even gods felt their composure tremble. Yet such power came at a price. Beauty makes one seen, but not always understood. To Aphrodite, admiration was endless, but intimacy rare. The goddess was wed to Hephaestus, the smith of Olympus. His skill was legendary. His forges breathed miracles into iron, gold, and bronze. But his form was bent, his gait uneven, his hours consumed by work. Where he found satisfaction in sparks and smoke, she found only silence. Their union was not love but arrangement, a knot tied by Zeus's will rather than the heart's choice. Aphrodite bore her crown with grace. She dined beside him. She wore the jewels he crafted, yet her heart wandered like a tide. She longed not for metals shaped into ornaments, but for fire shaped into passion, for the warmth of a touch that burned not with obligation, but with hunger around her. The court of Olympus hummed with whispers and half-glances. The gods know desire when it stalks the air. Helios, the sun god whose eyes miss nothing, had already marked a shadow stretching between two figures. It was not yet spoken aloud, but the halls of Olympus do not keep secrets for long. On the horizon, she felt it. Not thunder, not footsteps, but a presence drawing closer. A heat older than war itself, one that would not be denied. The goddess turned her eyes toward the halls and waited. Hephaestus's forge lay beneath Olympus like a heart that preferred to beat in secret. Sparks rose in orange constellations, faded, and were born again. The smith moved with a practiced rhythm, limp and labor unified by will. He folded bronze the way poets fold meaning. He persuaded iron as diplomats persuade kings. Yet at the high table his chair sat cool when hers was warm. At the hour when cups should clink and conversation ripple, silence took the seat between them. Hephaestus loved as a craftsman loves, with focus, with endurance, with artifacts that outlast storms. Aphrodite required a love that moved like weather. He watched her sometimes, no bitterness in his gaze, only calculation. How does one weld what refuses to melt? She watched him sleep, no cruelty in her eyes, only a mercy that could not set the room alight. On certain nights he brought her bracelets that remembered their shape, filigree that learned her pulse. She smiled and thanked him. She wore them dutifully. But ornaments did what ornaments do. They circled a truth without entering it, and so the marriage continued as a bridge no one crossed, beautiful, useful, and empty in the middle. Olympus, which is fluent in spectacle, had no word for this kind of quiet. Ares came to the hall like a storm that remembered its manners. Bronze armor breathed firelight, a crimson cloak unfurled as if the air itself bowed. Mortals fear him, gods roll their eyes yet in the ledger of power, columns still tilt toward his name. He paused. She turned. The world did not stop, but it glanced over its shoulder. Ares knew victory as a taste on the tongue. What he felt now was something more dangerous, hesitation. They did not speak first. The silence spoke for them. "Do you see me?" asked one look. "Have you ever been seen?" answered the other. Hephaestus's absence drew a boundary around the moment, and the boundary felt like invitation. Ares inclined his head. Aphrodite's eyes became a door. The gods around them continued their rehearsed conversation, but words lost weight, and goblets forgot their echo. War met love, and for once neither wanted to win. Both wanted to burn without ending. Corridors hold secrets the way harps hold silence. Between columns, where torchlight makes promises and shadows do the signing, Ares and Aphrodite passed each other. Hands brushed, not a grasp, an accident that auditioned for destiny. "Lady," he murmured. The word was armor shed without clatter. "My lord," she replied, and the phrase tasted like risk. No vow was spoken, no ring unmade. They merely stood too close in a hall designed for distance. The air did the rest. He was heat-contained, she was the breath that urged embers into flame. Helios, who sees too much to enjoy any of it, caught their reflection in a polished column and kept the image the way one keeps a coin. Not because it is needed, but because someday it may be. When they parted, they did not go far, only long. Desire lengthens corridors, turns seconds into corridors as well. On a moonlit balcony above the sleeping roofs of Olympus, they met again. No doors slammed in outrage, no storms announced a decree. The night simply offered them a room with no walls. Ares let his cloak fall around her shoulders, and the crimson looked like a secret remembering its color. "I have known conquest," he said softly, "but never permission." "And I have known worship," she answered, "but seldom touch that listens." They did not trespass upon law so much as surrender to gravity. Two celestial bodies, finding at last the orbit drawn for them by an astronomer more ancient than Zeus. They stood close, breath braided with breath, and the city's lamps below seemed to arrange themselves into constellations that spelled now. Above them, the moon performed a ritual it does for all lovers. It pretended to be a witness. In truth, it was a participant. When they parted before dawn, both carried a warmth that forges envy in iron and courage in silk. Helios rose with his golden team and saw what the dark had signed. In a distant chamber, laughter too soft for war and too honest for ceremony. He did not judge, he recorded. The sun is not a priest, it is a scribe. By midday, the rumor wore sandals. Hermes tried it on for speed. Hera weighed it for outrage. Apollo held it to the light, found music in it, and looked away. Zeus, who prides himself upon thunder, pretended the cloud was empty. The palace developed a new architecture of glances. Conversations gained mezzanines where meaning could stand and listen. Hephaestus, whose ears had learned to hear the future in the ring of hot metal cooling, detected a new note, a hiss, faint and satisfied. On Olympus, gossip is a weapon, but it cuts both the subject and the hand that wields it. The gods laughed, softly. Laughter is how power tries not to appear frightened. Hephaestus did not shout, he measured. He placed the measuring upon his anvil and struck it until it confessed. From molten gold he drew threads finer than breath. From those threads he wove a net with no mercy in its design. If love would not come to him, justice would. Not Zeus's justice, too theatrical, not Hera's, too personal. A craftsman's justice, invention as verdict. Sweat ran, sparks hatched and died. His face, usually resigned to the noble fatigue of usefulness, sharpened into something else, a geometry of resolve. When the net was done, it looked harmless, like moonlight practicing on air. Only the maker and the metal knew what it could do. He set it where hope goes to bed and rose where pride keeps watch. If guilt was present, it would be caught. If innocence, then the net would be a harmless rumor. Hephaestus told himself this twice, then a third time, as if repetition could sand the edges of pain. Ares arrived when the halls were quiet enough to hear what one thinks. Aphrodite turned, and the room became a vow. The net fell with the silence of a thought finishing itself. At first it felt like light trying on their shoulders. Then it tightened, and the light remembered that it was metal. They struggled, divine strength meeting divine design, and found that even gods can be held if grief has forged the chain. Aphrodite's eyes flashed, not only with shame, but with a refusal to surrender the truth of what they'd found. Ares bared his teeth, not in rage but in recognition. He had underestimated the genius of a man he never learned to praise. Hephaestus stepped forward, not triumphant, not gloating. A craftsman making a point. You might break mountains. I made the tool that shaped them first. The chamber glowed with the cruel beauty of the trap. Love and war ensnared together, a metaphor hammered into fact. In the court of Olympus, gold upon gold, Hephaestus presented the shining net and its lesson. Zeus reclined with lightning's confidence. Poseidon set his trident like a column between thoughts. Hermes tapped 2 fingers against curiosity. Apollo smiled a musician's complicated smile. Laughter rose, first the polite kind, then the kind laughter becomes when it drinks power, careless. Behold the conqueror, conquered, someone quipped, and cups remembered to ring. Aphrodite stood straight within her shame. Ares lifted his chin as if to say he had known worse chains, though not more elegant ones. The gods made a ring of mockery around them, and yet a few faces, Athena's calm, Demeter's wintered kindness, did not laugh. They understood that ridicule is merely justice that lost its way to wisdom. Poseidon, who knows something about storms and stillness, spoke. Release them, he said, not as favor, but as function. Let the sea keep the memory, and let the land keep the lesson. Zeus shrugged the way a sky shrugs weather. If the tide insists. Hephaestus hesitated, a silence longer than custom permits. Then he unmade what he had made, each knot becoming both mercy and wound as it loosened. Ares and Aphrodite stepped free, not absolved, merely unbound. Their eyes found one another's across the space where light had been a prison. Defiance burned, but so did cost. The court returned to its feasting with the speed of power returning to itself. Yet the room felt taller, as if something essential had stood up. Aphrodite went to Cyprus, where the shoreline speaks her dialect. Waves rehearsed their old worship. Her veil learned the wind again. She stared across water that remakes itself without apology. Once love had been easy for her, like breathing in a room designed for breath. Now it stung like salt and healed like it too. She touched the bracelets Hephaestus had crafted and felt gratitude, not hunger. She touched the memory of Ares's cloak and felt hunger, not peace. Not all altars are made of stone, she whispered. Some are made of moments, and some crumble exactly when they should. She wept, briefly, because tears are merely the sea collecting rent, and then she stood more beautifully than before, which is to say, with cost. Beauty purchased by suffering is the only kind that knows its own weight. In Thrace, under a sky scraped raw by crimson, Ares surveyed ground that remembered too much iron. He looked across a distance that was not only miles but choices. Far off, like a star that declined to be merely far, Aphrodite's silhouette brightened. Not a visitation, an echo made visible. They did not speak. The world did it for them. Between them lay judgment, laughter, a net of golden light, a balcony where breath braided with breath, and a marriage that had learned the sound of its own silence. Between them lay youth that would never return, and something better that might. Ares lifted his spear, not in threat but salute. Aphrodite let a veil ride the wind toward him, a mercy given to the air. Some loves are meant for crowns and daylight. Others are the lanterns we carry through corridors, flickering, precious, enough to get us home. And though Olympus will forget in the way empires forget, too quickly, too loudly, the sea will remember, the iron will remember, and the moon, which is never only a witness, will carry their secret in its pale, tender hands.